I want to talk, Craig, about an ad that's airing on radio stations throughout the Fresno area, and this is regarding the 31st Assembly District.
Republican Assembly candidate Clint Olivier caught on tape. Clint Olivier, in his own words.
You will come across different people in our society and go out in the street, and people say, well, you have a right to clean water. That's a luxury item. People say, well, you have a right to an education. You have a right to clean air.
Do you feel these are rights?
I don't. There's going to be people that are listening to this right now and say, oh, that's ridiculous. What do you mean drinking water is a luxury item? And that's fine.
No, it's not fine.
The host on the show that Clint was on, his name was Chris Dowdy, right?
All right.
Once he heard the ad and found out how it had been cut, this was his response.
If you've been listening to the radio or watching television recently, you probably have heard the commercial where Clint Olivier, in his own words, states that clean air, clean water, and education are not rights, that they are luxuries, and that he is fine with that.
That's the actual host of the show there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was there. He heard the whole thing.
He didn't like it. He thought that it was underhanded, and I agree.
I would say they took great liberty with that. Mamma mia.
Yeah, there were some edits in there, that's for sure.
This is KC24 News at 6.
This is a complete pack of lies and a misrepresentation of my position.
It's not our ad. I haven't listened to his podcast.
Creators of an ad targeting Councilmember Clint Olivier pulled an excerpt from a podcast he participated in back in November. And now the radio show that hosted that podcast is upset, saying the audio was taken without their permission and completely out of context. The Olivier campaign upset over an attack ad, which includes pieces of a podcast by Longbox FM featuring Olivier last November. But another person upset by the ad, Chris Dowdy, the podcaster behind the interview, he says was taken without his permission.
He's a cool guy. He's basically a young person who has turned his dining room into a studio, and it's what you would expect. It's, everybody sits around a big table and there's rock band posters on the walls, and it's a fun thing.
To go to some podcast with an audience in the dozens that's taking advantage of the lack of sophistication of somebody who's not a political mover.
Does it mean less that he said it on a relatively unknown podcast with not as many listeners as the fine gentleman would like to have?
Attacking the attack ads. Assembly candidate Clint Olivier lashing out again today against his opponent, Joaquin Arambula. Heather, thanks so much for joining us. I'm Evan Onstock.
And I'm Stephanie Verrucci, and we're your local election headquarters. Debate surrounding the race for State Assembly District 31 is heating up again. Campaign ads are at the heart of the issue once more. Today, candidate Clint Olivier officially called out his opponent, Dr. Joaquin Arambula.
To ask that Dr. Arambula man up.
A small group of supporters gathered in downtown Fresno, upset by this radio ad.
Real talk here on KMJ. Craig Hansen with Brad Maskey.
Well, let's just get back to the basics of what the interview was about in the beginning.
Daniel on KMJ.
I think Clint Olivier doesn't want people that had clean air and clean water. Of course he does.
Clint being on the Dowdy podcast on longbox.fm with an audience in the low dozens. Sorry, Chris. It's a fun little podcast, but it's not this massive political thing that has a whole bunch of ears.
The Ray Appleton Show on News Talk 580 and now 105.9 KMJ.
Now, I want to get some background on what you actually said. Where did this statement occur?
I went on an internet radio program, and it's called the Dirty Dowdy Podcast. Young people, it's
actually quite a bit of fun.
It is. Yeah. You went on there, right?
Not yet.
Okay, you should. It's cool.
No, I'm going to. I told him I would, but the one night he wanted me on, I had band practice, so I couldn't make it.
The guys over there at Longbox FM, they're young and they're intelligent and they're articulate.
To your knowledge, has Arambula been on this little program at all?
No.
Has not?
His name was Chris Dowdy.
Chris Dowdy.
He's a cool guy.
The Dowdy podcast on longbox.fm.
Longbox FM.
It's a fun little podcast.
It's called the Dirty Dowdy Podcast.
It's actually quite a bit of fun.
The guys over there at Longbox FM, they're young and they're intelligent and they're articulate.